Due to the recent news that Jason Momoa is signed on as the Crow, I wanted to remind myself just how much I enjoyed the original and bring you guys another retrospective review. So today's review is of course on the 1994 classic, The Crow, featuring Brandon Lee in the titular role and Michael Wincott as the inspired, looming villain, the puppet master, so to speak. Alex Proyas directed the comic adaptation, a man known for such dark and gothic aesthetics as The Dark City, and that combined with James O'Barr's inspired story, we received something thoroughly unique, miserably beautiful, a tale of love, loss, and supernatural revenge. Centered around Eric Draven and his fiancée who were brutally murdered and raped, respectively. The story was written by David J. Shaw and John Shirley, based on James O'Barr's popular comic book of the same title, though it does have some minor detours such as the fact the Crow never actually featured in the comic, however it plays a pivotal role in the movie. Not just as a character unto itself that assists Eric in his revenge, but also a plot device later in the film. It's a movie that undoubtedly has Alex Proyas written all over it. The aesthetic is a blending of the dark gothic comic, the grungy 90s era, and the director's unique style. When you flash forward 4 years in his career, you can see similar tones and styles running through Dark City, another of his projects. It's a story about love lost and revenge for that loss. A local gang brutally rapes a woman and in the process murders her fiancé, Eric Draven, a day before Halloween, which were to be their wedding day. 1 year later, by way of the Crow, Eric Draven rises from his grave, unsure of why, where he is, who he slowly, upon touching things and reliving memories, remembers himself and what happened. Then begins his revenge for his lost love and life. So in that respect, it is a love story, and those themes do run strong through it, but not in your face and needless. They offset the brutal nature of what Eric Draven has become on his resurrection. The tender moments when he remembers what he had, sees his fiancée, and the times they shared are touching, and reminds you that this isn't just a killer. He has motivation, conviction, and his actions can be argued to be justified. It also humanizes the character and allows that emotional connection for the viewer. It's a performance that is done to perfection by Brandon Lee. Genuinely, he embodies that character. He pulls it off so well, and you can see it from the moment his character comes from the grave. There aren't many moments you are removed from his performance, if at all, and rewatching it, those moments only come from the fact that it is an older movie, and you end up placing modern standards on it. He pulls off the crazed, blood-hungry, revenge-seeking boyfriend incredibly well, and yet those softer and more sincere interactions between the cop and the young girl are again engaging and believable. The stunts performed, leaping from great heights, falls, and all the explosions were so well done, even for the time, and Brandon Lee has a massive part to play in that. He performed all of his stunts and the fight choreography. The only thing he didn't do were the falls from the buildings, and that is quite literally because they wouldn't allow him to do it. In that regard, Brandon takes very much after his father, with his intense physicality and energy, bringing something to the role that made the character his and was unique in doing so. Now, it's something you can't avoid when reviewing the movie, but the tragedy of Brandon Lee dying from a mortal wound he suffered on the set of The Crow is undoubtedly something that gives the film another air and respect. Also, another tragedy in a movie that is already heavily involved in tragedy, simply from a story perspective. The film was completed, with some subtle rewrites of the script and Brandon Lee's stunt double having the late actor's face digitally superimposed onto him. The tragedy happened while Brandon had only 3 days left on set for shooting, so the majority of the film had actually been completed. But the fact they managed to complete the project and release it is still something that has to be respected and admired. The film itself is dedicated to Brandon Lee, of course, and his fiancée, Eliza. One of the standout scenes for me, which displays the overall acting range of Brandon, and also a great example as to why he was the perfect choice for the role, is when he initially confronts one of the gang members, Tintin, shouting "murderer," pinning the man down and quietly tells him he's going to tell him a story of two people in love, only for Tintin to retort it away. The heartfelt scene and emotional tale from Brandon Lee doesn't make him punch Tintin for his reply. No, a subtle slap During such an emotionally charged moment, it's all that's needed and adds some incredible depth in my eyes. It's something that always stands out to me. The scene progresses with more violence, of course, and Brandon's Eric Draven looking suitably menacing and somewhat unhinged. But that whole scene, for me, is a great example of his range, which can be witnessed throughout the entire movie. Ironically, the crow in the film is in fact a raven, which coincidentally, when paired with the fact Eric Draven quotes Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven when breaking into the pawn shop, makes for quite a good little Easter egg. The movie has some great lines when rewatching, which could have come across incredibly cheesy coming from someone else. Brandon Lee performed them so well though, not too on the nose, but with enough emphasis and energy that they actually hold up. One such line is when Ernie Hudson's cop character says, "You move and you're dead," to which Brandon's Eric replies, "Well, I say I'm dead and I move." The facial expressions and the way he delivered the line is what ensured it wasn't cheesy. There were no sudden sound effects or score coming in either. It's just two people having a discussion and one so happens to be dead, so the line has more weight than the cop realises. Now, although the gang members are an important part to the movie, the head honcho, the criminal overlord, Top Dollar, played by Michael Wincott, is again one of those casting choices that you just wouldn't have thought of. However, on film comes across just so well. He doesn't really come into play until the ending of the movie, but whoever thought Michael Wincott with long hair wielding a sword on a rooftop was the way forward deserves a massive pat on the back. He added his telltale husky and deep tones along with a sinister and calculated execution of the role, sealing himself as another highlight to an already great movie. The film performed incredibly well. It was created, all things said and done, on a reported $23 million budget, and it took just over $50 million. Critically, the response was not resoundingly positive, though it is more positive than negative, and it was widely reviewed as a stylish, smooth genre film. Hilariously, Roger Ebert actually liked the movie and called it a stunning work of visual style. The main negative reviews comment on similar issues to the positives, but then go on to say the superficial plot and badly written screenplay along with its one-dimensional characters were not elevated by its special effects and couldn't save it. These are things I would have to disagree with entirely, however. Not every character has to be multi-dimensional in films. Some serve the plot incredibly well as one-dimensional. The comments regarding superficial plot is something I find genuinely surprising, especially when the film, I feel, has quite complex themes, and it goes deep into those themes of love, loss, and revenge. Sure, it is fairly heavy around those main themes, but it does it incredibly well. A story doesn't have to have multiple and various elements to the plot to work. The Crow is simplistic in that way, and as I say, I feel it works very well. A lot of people claim The Crow only receives its cult-like status due to Brandon Lee's tragic death during its production. This might be true in some people's minds, however, if you weren't to know that it happened and watched the movie, I'm sure you would have much the same opinion as others. That it truly is a great film. You have to like the genre, of course, but stylistically it is sharp, unique, with great performances and a lot of heart. The film, outside of the tragedy, is deserving of the critical acclaim it acquired. The soundtrack used for the film is absolutely inspired. Every song is fitting, the tone, themes, just adding to why this movie is now a cult classic. With the likes of Nine Inch Nails, The Cure, Pantera, and even Rage Against the Machine, to name a few. Those bands are like the film. Tonally, they are of a time, and the addition to them on the soundtrack, as said, is truly inspired. It's a movie that could not be followed. They tried and failed, but as a concept, it can be followed. The recent news on the reboot is something which led me to rewatch the movie and bring you this retrospective review. I wanted to give it another go to see if it really is how I remembered it, and the comments on the reboot being a bad idea are valid. All that being said, I've got to say I feel a reboot is completely unjustified. That's not to say I won't follow it and watch it, I'm just surprised they didn't continue the idea further into the universe. The concept of the Crow resurrecting people to seek revenge lends itself extremely well to an anthology of stories set within the same universe, so a reboot I feel is fairly unjustified when taking that into account. The Crow is an incredibly well-made film. I don't give overall ratings, but there is very little I can speak of it negatively. The special effects, sure, they don't hold up to modern day standards, and the look, tone and soundtrack is of its time. But those things said and done, the film is superb. The acting works all round and the story is deep. It's something that you simply must watch if you haven't. So, what do you make of The Crow and of course, my review? Do you echo some of my sentiments here, or does your opinion differ wildly from my own? As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, so please do let me know down below in the comment section. And if you did enjoy this video, then please consider leaving it a like and subscribing to the channel for more reviews in the future. If you think this video is worth it, if you want to support me, the channel and what I do, then please head on over to my Patreon page, the link is in the description box. I've been Mr. H, and until next time, I'll catch you in the comment section.